Hey guys, this is part 3 of my 3-part review of the Avengers Bride of Ultron storyline. I'm covering issues 157 to 166. If you haven't seen the first 2 parts, click on the links below and then come back here for the grand finale. Be warned though, I will get into plot points and reveal stuff about the story. Doesn't mean you shouldn't watch, but if you want to read this story fresh, why not go get it and then come back for some lively discussion? Huh? Yeah. So we're back into action with Avengers 164, To Fall by Treachery. Once again, this is written by Jim Shooter, but now we've got another legendary artist on the book, John Byrne. The story opens up with Wonder Man being probed and prodded by Tony Stark, Yellow Jacket, Black Widow, and the Beast. Meanwhile, longtime Avenger foe Count Nefaria recruits Power Man to help him break Whirlwind and the Living Laser out of jail. He does so, and they promptly go and rob a bank. Enter the Avengers, and really, one of the best lines I've ever read in Avengers comic or comics period. You've got Yellow Jacket standing behind Captain America, who's telling the villains to stand down. And the Yellow Jacket says, "I'm ready to shrink down to insect size at your signal, Cap." Cap's response is that the Panther was almost in position as well, but really, maybe it should have gone something like this. "I'm ready to shrink down to insect size at your signal, Cap." Yeah. Isn't that what you do anyway? Just go ahead and do it. You don't have to wait for me to signal you. Just shrink on down. It's cool. Thanks, man. Anyway, the Avengers and the Lethal Legion fight. But once the Scarlet Witch enters the fray, the Lethal Legion says, "Hey, that's enough," and takes off. Meanwhile, we learn of Nefarious plans to up the powers of Power Man, Whirlwind, and the Living Laser, but he wants to use them to his own benefit. So these guys get souped up and attack the Avengers at the mansion. The fight is short-lived, however, because all of a sudden, the 3 villains lose their powers. Why? Well, the Avengers don't have long to wonder why, as the ground explodes beneath them and Nefaria is there looking all Superman'd out, and he's going to slay them all, because that's what villains do. Now let's cut to Avengers 165, Hammer of Vengeance. Back with Shooter and Byrne, Nefaria battles the Avengers. We see them trying to get their punches and their zaps in, but Nefaria just deflects them all. Wonder Man manages to get a few good punches in, but then Nefaria sturdies himself and takes it. I mean, really, this is what Avengers vs. Superman would look like, and I have to wonder if that wasn't Shooter's thought when he was writing this. Nefaria actually punches Wonder Man through a few walls in the mansion, and as Wonder Man recovers, he tells Jarvis to check the power because he has smashed through a few walls and could possibly have taken a power grid out. This is when we finally find out what happened to the Vision. He was taken out by Ultron in issue 161, but we haven't seen hide nor cape of the Vision since then, and we find out that Tony Stark and Hank Pym created some sort of healing tube so he could recover from the injuries that Ultron inflicted on him. Meanwhile, back at the battle, we see that Nefaria cannot damage Captain America's shield, which means maybe he doesn't have the limitless strength he thinks he has. Nefaria drops a building on the Avengers and, of course, assumes they are all dead. We know better, right? And in a cutscene, we see the first appearance of a man who would become a thorn in the Avengers' side, Agent Peter Gyrich. Meanwhile, thinking all the Avengers are dead, Nefaria goes and rips apart a bank vault and says, "You know what? I don't have any need for money. I'm super duper powerful." During this, he captures a woman and, for some unknown reason, decides to tell her that the reason he souped up the powers for Power Man, Whirlwind, and Living Laser was so that he could gain those powers at even a stronger rate, 100 times stronger, as he said. At that point, the Wizard, World War II speedster, shows up and starts to battle Nefaria, which takes about a second for Nefaria to beat him, but the Wizard tells him that even if Nefaria takes over the world, he will eventually die because he's over 50, past his prime, and so what if he takes over the world? His nightmare will eventually end, the world will go on, he'll be nothing more than a footnote in history, just like Hitler. This really upsets Nefaria, and he decides he needs to do something about it. Meanwhile, Iron Man finally arrives and rescues the Avengers from the fallen building. The team lays into Iron Man for being a very poor leader and only being around sometimes and not effectively leading the team. But before Iron Man can defend himself, Enter Nefaria again at the mansion, looking for Thor. Nefaria thinks if he can get Thor's hammer, he will become immortal, even though that's really not how it works. Iron Man tackles Nefaria on his own, much to the rest of the team's chagrin. They jump in anyway, when suddenly Yellow Jacket flies off. Just when it seemed like Nefaria had the upper hand, enter Thor. Now we're at Avengers 166, Day of the Godslayer. Again, shooter and burn on this one. Thor attacks Nefaria, and Nefaria, while nervous about facing Thor, seems to be handling Thor's blows, and that helps to gain Nefaria's confidence. Nefaria hurls a building at Thor. I mean, this guy is a one-trick pony with all the building hurling he does. And of course, thinks Thor is dead. You'd think maybe Nefaria would check a pulse every now and then. So as you know, Thor recovers and attacks Nefaria again. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the Beast discovers why Yellow Jacket flew off in battle in the previous issue. Yellow Jacket is going to revive the Vision. After the Vision recovers, he seems a lot more robotic than he did before. The Vision joins Thor in battle against Nefaria. The battle rages on when suddenly Professor Sturdy, who is the scientist who gave Nefaria all these powers, shows up out of the blue, especially since Nefaria thought he was dead. Nefaria, really? Can you not maybe make sure these guys are dead before you run off? Sturdy tells Nefaria that the powers he has is burning him up and he's starting to rapidly age. Nefaria does acknowledge this and goes berserk, starting to trash New York City. He was doing a pretty good job already throwing those buildings around. The whole team is back at Nefaria and starts to do some damage, but even with their best blows, Nefaria is only staggered. The Vision, meanwhile, has flown 1 mile above the city, alters its density to the purest diamond, and begins to fall, and falls directly on Nefaria, knocks him out. So that puts an end to Nefaria, and immediately the team starts to bicker. Iron Man goes after Thor for suddenly showing up every time the team is in desperate need. Captain America says, hey, hold on, Iron Man. You're not around a lot. What kind of leader are you? Yellow Jacket interrupts them all and says that he found Sturdy just before he died and said that Sturdy was lying about the fact that Nefaria was rapidly aging and that in fact his cells had become so supercharged that he was effectively immortal anyway. So he really didn't even need Thor's hammer. So that's it. That is the Bride of Ultron. Like I said, it does lead into the Korvac saga. You had to know a little bit about this before we can get into the Korvac saga. But before we even get to that, I'm going to spend the next couple episodes talking about some of the subplots that were going on within this storyline, notably around the Beast, Wonder Man, Vision, Captain America and Iron Man, and maybe a little Yellow Jacket as well. If you're going to start reading comics, and I'm thinking most of you probably already do, but if you're going to start reading comics, or if you are a younger person and have not read these classic Avenger tales, good grief, go read them. They're some of the best comics ever. The mid-70s, in my mind, were top-notch when it came to comics, and these issues were some of my first entry points into the Avengers themselves, and has turned into a long-lasting love of the team. Go get them. I told you how to do it. What are you waiting for? Why are you here? Go read them. Read them. Get out of here. Go. I'm not looking anymore.